I'm Serena Pariser, educational consultant, author, speaker, and K-12 educator. And I'm here with my lovely co-author to introduce our newest book.
Hi, I'm Dr. Vicki Lentfer. I'm a lecturer at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. I also am a speaker and an author, and I also provide coaching for teachers and administrators.
Yeah. And so our book, 5 to Thrive, Answers to Your Biggest Questions About Creating a Dynamic Classroom, is actually part of the 5 to Thrive series. And the nice thing about this book, it's for all grades, all subjects, K through 12, and it's kind of the general ed book of the series. And so why it was written, a little background, is that during the global pandemic, a lot of teachers in training lost in-person training time in a classroom. And those are vital hours and lessons and minutes that we learn how to create a dynamic classroom. And so we wanted to create a stopgap with the things that might have been missed during virtual training or lack of training. And so this book's also for teachers that just want to refresh their teaching practices. It's great for teachers that are transitioning into teaching and decided they want to take maybe a more meaningful career path. And so this book has such a wide audience, and we're so excited to launch it.
Awesome. I think one of the best features that we have in the book is we talk about behavior expectations, right? So you want to start that out right away in the beginning of the year. I always talk about it like you teach behavior as you would content. So if I put the quadratic formula up, some of you might get it right away. Some of you might have a couple questions, need a reminder, and some just want to be out of the classroom, right? So that's content, but behavior is no different, right? Some students know how to raise their hand, sit quietly, and wait until they're called upon. Others will raise their hand and blurt out at the same time. They might need a reminder, while others just blurt out. So you need to meet the students where they're at, just as you do with content, as you would behavior. So expectations tend to lend a hand to that. If the students don't know what you expect, then that becomes a communication issue. So at the beginning of the year, make sure you set those expectations, have the students come along with you, create those, make sure they know why they're created, and then have them practice it. And the key to keeping those expectations thriving in the classroom is to make sure that you hold them accountable. And this is when you make sure that if they're not doing something correctly, you want to make sure to have that conversation and help guide them along, just as you would with content, right? And so the behavior expectations are really key to the beginning of the school year, as well as throughout the school year.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. And just to add on to that, if in the beginning of the year you make expectations with the class and then you let it slide a little bit, and then around October, November, you're like, all right, we got to go back to, then you look like the bad person. And so if you have the co-created expectations kind of monitoring the class and you're facilitating the lesson, then you're not the bad guy when you have to fall back on them, and you will, because behaviors will start to slip.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it's always good to revisit them, especially after Christmas or holiday break.
Mm-hmm.
That's always, they're like, oh my gosh, we're back. And then it's like, okay, let's get back together and let's build that community again.
Exactly. And something I wanted to talk about that we do cover in the book is connecting with the student that challenges us, that really challenges us. There's going to be, I would say, 1 or 2, at least in every classroom, and they're going to kind of stick out in the beginning of the year. Maybe it'll be day 1, probably not, but maybe. And it'll probably be around week 2 or 3, where you realize the student's going to just need a little bit more love. And I like to call these students connection kids, because these are students that need to know you like them as a human being before they're ever going to learn from you. So it's a little bit of a backwards approach. And a way that they know you like them is that, this seems silly to say, but you know their name. And you say their name with the same tone that you say everyone else's name. They're not going to take you seriously if you don't know their name. So please take the time to get to learn these connection kids' name. And if they're not performing academically in your class and there's kind of frustration on both sides, or they're really not meeting the behavior expectations as fast as the other students are, something you can do that's really simple but effective, and this sounds strange, but it works, is ask them to help you out with something that you can't understand. For example, technology is a really good, you could be like, hey, Sarai, do you know how to do this in Word? I can't figure it out. So what this does, it's a little bit of a mind trick, but it has them feel valued from you in a way that they're confident. And it actually grows that connection that you needed them for something. They're needed and valued in the class. And that's just a little trick that really helps with those connection kids in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touch upon some great things. We're always going to have a challenging student in our classroom, and that's wonderful, and you need to make sure that we build relationships. So often we get in the hustle and bustle, and especially at the beginning of the school year, it's kind of the honeymoon stage where, my goodness, the kids are just following instructions really well. And then you kind of think, oh, I'll just kind of be a little bit more laid back. But then all of a sudden you realize you find yourself in a moment where you have to redirect students. And if you take the time to really build those relationships. And what I mean by that is you can always integrate the content, but make sure you spend time doing some icebreakers, some get to know you activities, some team building. Some of these things only take 3 to 5 minutes, and taking 3 to 5 minutes a few times throughout the week will save you time in the long run, because that's building that community, building that trust and that respect among one another. And when you have that, especially with what Serena was talking about with the connection kids, wow, I mean, that will pay dividends, because and that's actually in our section 1. And that's one of my favorite ones, is building that affirming community. And that's a huge part of it, is taking that time to build that relationship and really take the time to get to know them beyond the classroom, and attend their activities and ask them about what they enjoy, and then try to integrate their interests into the content as well.
I love that.
Yeah.
And we talked about student names, and you talked about full class, team building and icebreaker and things like that. What that does, and we talk about this in our chapter 1, how to kind of start out the class like this, is it creates a community of learners where, yes, all their names, but do they know each other's names, and are they using each other to kind of grasp the content in it? Because learning is a social activity.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to kind of glue the class together and start that in a dynamic classroom in the first week, even first hour of school.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you said learning is a social activity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't forget, you're learning as well as a teacher. Mm-hmm. You're constantly learning. And so taking that time to get to know your colleagues and your administrators as well. Chapter 5 does a great job of talking about work-life balance, because you'll find yourself, especially when you're new or newer in the classroom, you can get overwhelmed pretty quickly. So you want to make sure that you spend time with taking care of yourself, and enjoying conversations with your colleagues that are uplifting and not complaining, but just more uplifting, and sharing ideas that work, and just having that community outside of the classroom as well for you as the teacher is so important.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of favorite chapters, mine is chapter 1 out of the 5, and it's how do I build an affirming classroom community? Because in my first couple of years of teaching, I never really understood how important this is. Mm-hmm. Doing this will not only create a dynamic classroom or help you, but it'll make your job so much easier, because the students feel like they're part of a team, and it's not you versus them. You're all in a team together. So there are specific strategies we walk you through, how to actually create that community, because that community does not, 99% of the time, it does not come naturally. It takes work from the teacher, but it's actually not that difficult. It's just a different way of thinking about your lessons in the beginning of the year. And then it'll be like, this is how we always did it. This is how we function. So I think this chapter is, although I had trouble picking a favorite chapter, but this chapter is ever so important to having a dynamic classroom.
Yeah, and truly all of our sections, there's 5 of them, just like you were talking about, building that classroom community, how to keep students at the center. We always talk about that, but what does that really mean and look like and sound like? Designing engaging learning for students. We got some great tips for that as well. Assessments. Of course, you're going to hear a ton about assessments. And so you probably do more assessment than you even think. And so we give some great strategies to be able to have some innovative ways to engage our students while they're being assessed as well. And then, of course, how to take care of yourself would be the last section. And those are some great tips to, like I was talking about the work-life balance and how to maintain your energy and what do you do if you get stressed or burned out. And this will help you to kind of be a little more proactive on that burnout piece. So
yeah, and speaking of taking care of yourself, because we see that everywhere. The last section, actually, Vicki and I went through and we talked about what are all the things that are rarely discussed in a teacher training program, and we say rarely because sometimes they are, but you need to know. So we learned this year 2, year 3, year 4, the hard way. So we just did a breakdown to make the skeleton. And we said, these are what teachers need to know before going into the classroom. So you're not wasting time figuring it out with trial by fire, and you can really focus on creating that dynamic classroom.
yeah.
So we're so excited to have this out there and hopefully be in the hands of many of you.
One of the best things about the book is that it's a quick, easy read. You can, if you have a certain something that you're looking for, right? And it's easy. It's like, boom, you can look through it and go, this is what I'm looking for. And we'll take you right there. And so
everything's answered in one page.
Yeah.
So,
right. So education is a wonderful profession. You're going to have a ton of fun. You're going to have a ton of challenging moments, but that's where we always learn and grow the most, right? And so we're excited to help you along the way. If you need any help, Serena and I are always available to do any professional development that you need, or any questions or any conversations you would like to have, that we're always available.
And good luck in this upcoming school year. Every year is a new beginning, even though we're learning more. And we can't wait to hear how it's going.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.